In the parallel passage over in Matthew, Jesus is asked 3 questions, and we deal with it more fully when we come there. So we will make this brief. But there they ask him 3 questions when he talked about the temple in Jerusalem in the future to be torn down. They had asked him, when shall these things be? Second, what shall be the sign of thy coming? And third, what would be the sign of the end of the age? Now, they were being typically Jewish. Paul writes and said that the Greeks seek after wisdom, but the Jews demand a sign. And this is exactly what these disciples were asking of Jesus. And this reference here in the Matthew parallel passage is applied to the immediate fall of Jerusalem. That is, within a generation, AD 68, 69, 70, when it terminated, when the Romans took Jerusalem. He said on that day, if you're on the flat housetop, and they had an outside stairway which went up on top of the house, and that's your front porch, we'd say today. That's where you got the breezes after about 4 o'clock in the afternoon when the wind shifts, comes in off the Mediterranean, and breaks the heat of the semi-tropical day. And he said if you're on top of the house, you have to flee. Don't take time to even go down inside the house, get what you want and take it. No, go direct. Come down the stairway. Go. And the Christian community in Jerusalem, AD 70, when they saw the Roman armies surrounding the city, they obeyed this. And they left Jerusalem and got out through the Roman lines, and they were not a part of those who were destroyed in the destruction of the city. He said here, those that are in the field, don't go back to the house to get something, go from the field. And then he said, remember Lot's wife. It's a very interesting thing that there are a number of things in the Old Testament that are hard for our present Western modern mind to really accept. We have trouble about miracles. We have trouble about judgment. We have even believers who are troubled with the idea of God having to do with storms, although the Bible distinctly says he rides on the storm. And the book of Job talks about God is the author of hail, God is the author of rain, God is the author of snow. But there are some of these things, in particular Lot's wife is one of the questions. The Bible talks about her being changed into a pillar of salt. The details are not given. This occurred in an area in which there are great salt deposits which are slowly being eroded away as the rains fall, very small rains, the rains fall slightly over the Dead Sea, and the wind blows and erodes the salt. Because of the light rainfall, it's a very slow process. But Jesus stops here to take that little story out of the Old Testament and put his stamp of approval on it. Remember Lot's wife. In other words, Jesus believed what the Bible said. He puts his stamp of approval upon this difficult passage. Likewise, probably more difficult than the creation is the reconciling of the account of the flood with what we think we know about geology and so on, and there are very real problems involved here. And Jesus talks about as it was in the days of Noah. Jesus believed the flood story. And you can go through several other places, and Jesus picked out something. Jonah, which a lot of people believe is non-historical, Jesus taught it as historical. Put his approval upon Jonah, Lot's wife, the flood. And if Jesus believed it, I suppose that maybe we should too. Then he lays down a principle in verse 33 that the way to get somewhere in this life is not to directly seek it. That real life, happiness, joy are byproducts of doing the will of God. The man who reads the manual on how to be married and still happy, as the case may be. And there's the other book, which is how to be single and be happy, you know, and the cancel each other. But whoever seeks to save his life, who directly tries to achieve happiness, will miss it. But he who takes his life and spends it for God, who loses it, who, I wouldn't want to say the word gamble, and yet who risks it, who puts it out and lays it on the line for God, this man finds it. This man finds it. You want life? Spend it for God. You won't lose it. You'll find it coming back to you. Again, about this matter of his return, which they were interested in, he lays this principle down. He said, there are people who are so near to each other that they're at the same task. So it's not a geographic thing. It's a spiritual thing. The men may be in the same field. One of them is ready for the coming of the Lord. The other man is not. There will be two women grinding at a mill. Now this would be the domestic mill, 12 inches, 18 inches across, would be a very large one, most of them not quite that large. There will be the bottom stone slightly conical, and the one above it concave so it fits over it, a hole in the top of the middle of the top one. You can still see these in operation today in certain parts of the world, even in the Americas, in Central America. And there will be a little hole put in the top stone, and a woman has taken a stick and put this peg in this hole, and it becomes a handle, and she goes round and round and round, and as the handle is out of the way, with her left hand she will feed some grain, wheat, barley, or in Central America it'd be corn, but in the Bible times they had no corn. So take your hand out and you keep grinding around, and there's a little more room the way the stones are ground at the center, and out at the edge the stones ride each other, and so as she goes around, this finely ground wheat, barley, rye, spelts, as the case may be, falls out around the edge, is gathered up as meal and made into cakes and eaten. And he said there'll be two women there. One will be grinding, the other will be feeding. All of a sudden, one of them will be gone. One was ready, and one was not. And they said, where? And this is one passage of Scripture, I will not tell you what it means, because I don't know, really. Where the body is, there the eagles will be gathered together. The simplest explanation to me is one which would not appeal to Westerners, because the eagle is a buzzard. He's a scavenger. And the body here is actually that, of course, of carrion, of a dead sheep, something like this. But I think Jesus is using this very common thing, because in Spain and all through this area, there are great flocks of buzzards flying around the air looking down to see some animal they may eat on. And Jesus is using this in the sense that where the action is, there's where they'll be gathered. It's a parable or a reference to a local experience which does not appeal to us. But this is the East, and they were more blunt in some ways than we are. The point for us is that Jesus is coming back. We do not know the date of the hour, and it's up to us to be ready. For in such an hour as you think not, the Son of Man cometh. Be ready.
Now we trust that you've taken your notes and you're now ready to take our TV Bible exam, which is coming right up. What is the number one interest of American adults? The answer, health.